All right. Episode 3 of the Hot Seat is live. We got the timer going. Well, not quite. Now we got the timer going. And my next guest is none other than Alec Pantaleo. And to introduce Alec, Alec is from Canton, Michigan. He was a 3-time All-American at the University of Michigan, Big Ten champ. And his international career just raised the bar, where he was a freestyle national champion at the U.S. Open, and he's won 7 international gold medals. Yes, 7, including 2 Pan American championships. And at one point, he was ranked the #1 wrestler in the world by the UWW. And I want to start off by saying that, after going through all those accolades, I think people would be pretty shocked to hear that you were actually a walk-on at the University of Michigan to start off. Is that true?
Yeah. It's funny too. You just count the medals. I didn't even count the medals. They're hanging up somewhere in my house. I don't even know where they are. But yeah, going back to your question, I was a walk-on at the University of Michigan.
And I mean, that's just crazy to think about. You had so much success in college, and like a lot of people probably would have considered you, if you asked, they would have thought you were a blue chip recruit. So like, what happened? Like, what drastic changes it seems like occurred during your time at Michigan, or maybe in your head? I would love to hear a little bit more about the transformation of Alec Pantaleo from high school to college and then to the international stage.
Yeah, and this is a question that I wish I had more answers to. The problem is, it's many times people, they have success, they don't document it, and they try and recall back, and they try and find the things that may have happened. There are a few things that I think I did that put me at an advantage moving forward in college, but it started back in high school. So yeah, I wasn't a blue chip recruit. I was a 1-time state champ. I was a 2-time state qualifier. I lost a season from injury. Then freshman year of high school, I didn't even qualify for the state tournament. So made some big gains, but it's all about what I did in my downtime. I've always been a very, very busybody, and thankfully I'm a busybody at productive, good things, not bad, destructive things. So one thing I would actually do in the summers of high school is, I'd go out and have fun, sure, as a high school kid, but I spent a lot of time inside the gymnasium learning backflips, front flips, parkour, as everyone calls it. I was all in on it. I loved it. And to me, it was just fun. It was a good way to get outside and spend time with some friends. But it translated over to wrestling beautifully, because when I realized when I got to college, I was just way more athletic than everyone else wrestling. And that's usually the big deciding factor from a high school kid to a college guy, is everyone's pretty athletic. In high school, you might wrestle someone who's not that athletic. So it worked. That's probably why I won a state title, because I was more athletic than people. And then it worked even more in college because I was just fast and explosive. Didn't know technique for the life of me, right? But I at least had that foundation on that you can't really replace. It just takes time and time. You can learn technique. It's kind of hard to learn to be athletic. So moving forward, I think that's probably the biggest thing that carried me. And then I had to go back and really learn technique. But that's what Michigan did. That's what, college wrestling, I was trying to buy the best minds in wrestling. So put those two together, and it's of course you're going to make huge gains,
Yeah. And you were thrown into the wolves, right? You didn't redshirt your first year in college.
Yeah.
You went straight into it. What was that like?
Yeah. So freshman year, to be honest, I was a walk-on. I didn't think I should even be there. I was like, this is a huge opportunity for me. I'll take it. If I flunk out, I'm expected to flunk out, right? And then it happened that year, there's kind of a void in the lineup, and I won the wrestle off, and the coach was like, hey, we're going to start you this weekend, see how you do. And I remember talking to a few of the guys on the team. I'm like, hey, coach wants to start me. Am I ready? Are you sure? And they're like, dude, if coach thinks you're ready and you won the wrestle off, you're ready. Looking back at that, I lost both my matches that week. And I'm like, man, college wrestling's hard. It was actually really bad. My first match, when I say lost, I wrestled at the time, the national finalist, Dave Habit, ended up being a teammate.
Our good friend, Dave Habit.
Yeah, we'll talk about that match. But right after that, I wrestled before that, a guy named Taiwan Claxton, who's now in Bellator MMA. He's a really a badass fighter, and he was an All-American, ranked top 10 in the nation. So those are my first few matches in college. Taiwan Claxton beat me by a point, and then Dave, I shot a double leg, and I crunched my neck, I got knocked out, and he pinned me. So that was my first introduction into true varsity level college wrestling. And it was very humbling. But if that's where the bar is at, I mean, I guess you can only go up. Right?
Yeah. So you were kind of, like thrown and kind of forged in the fire.
Yeah.
And I think I want to preface too that although Alec was a walk-on, he and I, we were on a dual team together as the backups. We always talk about this story. But also Alec had his debut in freestyle and literally beat, I think, 3 or 4 nationally ranked wrestlers at that tournament.
Yeah.
So even though walk-on, right, you were still, and also your senior year, you were probably the best wrestler in the state of Michigan. And, you just happened to have an unfortunate state finals match. Yeah. But what was your introduction to wrestling like? Like, how did you decide to get involved in wrestling, and what was your upbringing in the sport?
Yeah, I mean, like you guys, like most people who are from families of wrestlers, I was around wrestling since I was a baby. My dad has always been a coach. He was my coach in high school, and it was up until my senior year of high school, he was my coach. So ever since I started wrestling when I was 6 years old. Ever since I was a baby, I was crawling around on the mat. Family of wrestlers. Uncle Joe was a 2-time national champ. National finalist, not national champ. National finalist for University of Michigan, and junior world champ, a hell of a freestyle wrestler. My cousin Joe was a couple-time Virginia State champ. My uncle Dan was a Division III national champ. Like a bunch of wrestlers in my family. Yeah, so even if I found that I was good at this sport, there might be some genetics involved of why I was good. It sounds like in the Pantaleo bloodline, that's what we do. We wrestle. So,
Yeah, I can relate.
Yeah.
You said also, like, kicking back to high school, and I know this, so I'm kind of, cheating on this question, but you're a busybody, you stay really busy, and you talk about kind of your default, like your default is either training or getting in the sauna.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't feel too bad about putting but what does your training, do you have like a set training regimen? Or like over the years, has that changed? Or is there like some really consistent, like, nope, this is the Alec Pantaleo training regime?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So I'm a huge, this we get kind of like your own life philosophical thoughts. I'm a huge believer in the ebb and flow of things. You can't always be in peak performance condition. It's just, maybe you can, but then you're going to have a shorter career. You can't always be in that state of stress. So as far as my training, it is highs and lows. I peak for tournaments. I found that's best for me, especially with my style of wrestling. It's fast, explosive, so I have to be able to pull back on my weight training and focus more on speed and conditioning. But yeah, for the most part, I follow what my coaches say. That's one of my biggest life lessons and things I could tell high school wrestlers is find a good coach, find them a good mentor, and then trust what they have to say because they already did it. They've already gone through the fire. So I trust my coaches completely. Whatever my coaches say, I do. Outside of wrestling is when I have to be a little more careful many times because I find myself in projects in which are very, very energy draining.
What kind of projects are we
do everything. I'm the kind of guy where it's like I can't just like leave things alone. If I get a thought in my head, it just not even manifests. It just consumes me. It just consumes me. I'm laying in bed and I'm like, so it's kind of like my almost recipe for life, and I know it's based around hustle, but I like to lay down every night when I go to bed and think about all the things I did. I'm like, damn, that's a hell of a day I just had. Like I just had. I can relax now, but it's based off of the merit of what I did. So, as of recent, okay, here's a prime example. I saw on Pinterest people building pergolas. I'm like, oh, pergolas are cool. And then all of a sudden the next day I'm like, man, pergolas are cool. I could put a hammock under a pergola. Okay, fast forward to a week, I have about $2,000 worth of lumber in my driveway right now, and I'm building a giant pergola. And not just a small pergola, it's like a 20-foot by 20-foot one.
You're going to put a nice little dinner table underneath
At this point, I don't even know. It just consumed me. I'm just like, it's almost too much of an impulse control.
Challenge accepted. Pinterest.
Right, so, and this is just the most recent example. I can go into depth about everything. It's just how I am. But I mean, building a giant structure in your backyard is a pretty physically demanding thing, right? So I'm in a down point in my training cycle right now, so I can afford to, tinker around with things. But when it comes down to like extra training cycles, I'm focused fully in on from diet to sleep to nutrition that's like the ebb I'm in. That I'm in a current flow state right now. I can play around. So,
what is your, I guess, like diving into that nutrition, kind of like, I guess maybe walk us through like, okay, a day's worth of eating and a day's worth of training when you're at your most intense training phase, right? Not peaking, but now this is like we're in the thick of it, and we're doing maybe 2 a days, or I don't know. I don't want to speak for you, so
right. So you gotta prioritize sleep. Thankfully, I'm a very, very efficient sleeper when I do sleep, so I get a solid 8 to 10 hours every night. Even if I go to bed later or I'm just waking up later, I'm prioritizing sleep. I should drink more water. I do drink enough water, but I should drink more, of course. I probably should eat cleaner. I eat super clean as it is. There's always more you can do. I look back at my diet. I don't consume fast food. I don't consume, simple carbs unless it's like a pre-packaged sugar. To be honest, I'm kind of on a carnivore diet. Like, I don't eat many carbs unless I feel I need it for hard practice. And I just eat clean. And I've done this my entire life, and that's probably why I walk around at like 9%, 8% body fat,
Yeah. There's no like 30-day diet.
No, it's
right?
not.
It becomes a lifestyle.
Yeah, I'm not sacrificing anything. It's just what I do. It's how I am. It's almost like if I drink a Coca-Cola or something, or I eat fast food, my body rejects it. It's like, no, we're not doing this. It needs to be simple for me. So. Yeah.
I feel like that's probably something. Well, I think you're actually one of the outliers, because when we talk about like high-level athletes, especially wrestlers, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
That their diets aren't nearly as great as you think they are.
Yeah, vices. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess our vices might be something different. Yours is building pergolas, or
no. it's. I mean, we all have our vices. The pergola is another example. I mean, the past history I've gone on motorcycle kicks where I've had probably darn near 100 motorcycles at this point in my life. I'm 27 years old. Right? It's just like you see things and you're like, how can I find a way to win this? So you move on. That's like it's a cyclical. I don't know.
Yeah. I guess since we're on the topic, talking about some of the things that you like to do outside of wrestling, I would consider you, as somebody I know to be a hobbyist of sorts.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Like you said, you're kind of always keeping busy and working on other things. But what are some of your favorite things to do outside of wrestling?
Yeah.
And by favorite, it doesn't have to be necessarily enjoyable. Maybe what consumes most of your...
Can I open this up and wipe my face?
Yeah, sorry. I got a towel for you, too. He's got...
All right. I sweat a lot, so... It's perfect.
Oh, yeah. Nice. This doesn't count. The timer is still running.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I can sit here all day.
For those of you guys that are wondering.
And for those of you who are wondering, I literally spent about 2 hours in the sauna on day 2 of competition to get down to weight for the U.S. Nationals at 65 kilograms. Lost about 13 pounds. Not healthy. Don't do it. But if you can spend 2 hours in a sauna, I think I can spend 40 minutes in here.
Yeah. I think 30 is the time you got to be.
Okay, no problem. But hobbies outside of wrestling. So, again, I'm a big believer in cycles in life. And I also understand that you have only so much youth to spend. You start to move slower the older you get. I'm already starting to feel it at 27. I compensate with caffeine, don't worry. But
hyper-caffeinated.
Yeah, I'm always hyper-caffeinated. But it just depends on what catches my eye, usually is what I dive in at. I found for me, I have a very mechanical mind. So I like things that aren't exactly like puzzles, but they're the kind of things where you can once you understand how it works, you can start to dive in, and then you can add your own creative thought into it. So maybe that's why motorcycles were a thing. I always just like wanted a motorcycle. Then, like for example, my first bike I had, it needed a lot of work, and I had to help. I was hoping a buddy could help me work on it, and he couldn't. He was busy. So I just started tinkering with it, and I fixed it. And I'm like, well, how can I make it better? How can I make it way better? Then how can I sell this and get another bike that needs completely rework? And I'm at the point where I've like basically rebuilt an entire motorcycle. I then another prime example, last hobby I went on before this pergola, kind of same line. I bought a house, and it was a fine house. It was fine, right? The family lived there before me, but I'm like, no. We got to make it better. And I basically watched a bunch of those home shows where they redo houses. I'm like, I can do this. And I tore that sucker down to the bones. I then realized that they had a whole team helping them build the house. And I was maybe spread too thin. But I mean, I figured it out. It took me 2 years, but I rebuilt this entire dang house.
You gotta get that moment of like, move that bus.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
It's
So
just you standing there though, because there's no team that did it.
yeah, so it's all learning. So again, how my hobbies focus on how can I get better at this? How can I learn? How can I feel like I've maximized it and then move on? Right? It's hard to do that with wrestling. This is a wrestling-based podcast. It's hard to do that with wrestling because you'll never know enough to move on from it. And that's why you always have to seek other mentors that know more than you. And if someone says they have all the answers, they're lying, because new moves made up every day. Right?
Always evolving too.
Hobbies you can get away with being a little lenient on. So, yeah, man. So I went down the whole kick from paintballing back when I was in middle school to high school. I was doing all this parkour stuff, college motorcycles. In the most recent years, this whole rebuild the house. Just I want like 4 more houses now that I can just rebuild in all different ways. You just learn, man. You learn that you turn them into hobbies, and I enjoy spending time that way. It's productive.
Yeah. Well, you're on a little bit of right, like you said, it's kind of nice when you have the down period, because most people just spend that doing nothing or scrolling, like death scrolling on social media.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like these are like legitimate, hobbies that like lifelong skills,
Sure.
whether you're going to use them or not, like in the long term, but it's probably a better alternative. Kicking it back to wrestling. I know we got on a tangent there.
That's the whole point of this, right?
Yeah, hey, we're not. This isn't necessarily an interview, right? This is the back and forth. But I want to talk because I have so many unique experiences, and I think that we've even been on trips together. But what are some of the major differences that you've seen from competing domestically versus internationally? Like, whether it be wrestling related or it could even be just, going to some of these foreign countries. Let's get into it.
Yeah. That grit, whatever that is. Some athletes have it, some don't. Maybe this could just be a circumstantial thing. I notice a lot of guys overseas don't like going in that deep waters, and maybe they do, but then they start making excuses. They're like, they need like a little cold spray break, or, they start potting at the ref, which we do that here in the U.S., but not to the extent those guys do it. That was actually some of my game plans. Some of my gold medals I have has just been about, I'm just going to beat this guy up for the first 3 minutes, and then he'll be flustered, and then I can score the next 3. So I'm sweating quite a lot here.
Towel.
Yeah, that's why it's real good. Okay. Yeah, so I think, too, people at home watching should understand, too, that the U.S. is so good right now. If you're worried about how you'd stack up against the senior-level guys, we're seeing high school kids currently going to senior-level tournaments and placing top 3, if not winning it, right? So that's just where the bar in the U.S. is set right now. It's the same way in other countries. They have youth that are really good. So I don't see that huge of changes other than what I see currently here in the U.S. Other than that, just that grit, and maybe it comes from a point of relaxation. I know, Miles, you talked about that. We're a little, like, we know we have that chip on our shoulder. We know we might be a little bit better than you as far as tougher, might be in better shape than you. Like, that's the overall thing we say when we're wrestling. Guys from Russia or other, like, we're better athletes than them, right? They might be better technicians. I would argue they probably are better technicians. They have a better system, but we're in better shape, and that's enough for us to win in wrestling.
Yeah, deep waters is a hard place to live, right?
All right.
But if you go there all the time, like we do, and I think training, maybe like the way that we trained in college, you take for granted that until you get to the international stage, and then you realize, like, all those years of those like 2-hour practices that were just absolute, grinds, it kind of pays off.
Yeah, so that's the physical it helping you, right? You have the credentials to back it up. But it's a good Steve Prefontaine quote. People don't know who Steve Prefontaine is. He is one of the best mid-distance runners in the world. He died when he was super young, but he set a bunch of world records before that. And his whole thing he would do is, he was quoted at saying, the only pace is suicide pace, and today's a good day to die. And that's what he would do. He was just front run. He'd go as hard as he can go for as long as he can go. And he won a lot. He actually lost strategically to the guys overseas because he basically was gassed come the last lap. But one thing he did say is, if it comes down to a pure guts race, I'll put my money on me because I'm the only one that can win, right? So I think about that sometimes. I think about that with Austin Gomez qualifying for the Olympics. Like, KJ was yelling in his corner, we'll take it in the shootout. We'll take it in the shootout. It's like, that's your strength. His strength are shootouts. Maybe I have more heart. Maybe you have more of that, just that cardio. and you just dive in on it, and that's what's going to carry you to the finish line. You know?
Yeah. What's that movie by the Steve Prefontaine?
There's two of them. Yeah. So there's Without Limits, which is the one I prefer more, and then there's just Pre. They're both really good. I think people at home should watch them. I love it.
Yeah, I recommend. I think I've seen Without Limits. That one's the.
Donald Sutherland is the coach.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
He's a famous actor. Yep.
Yeah.
It's an incredible movie, and even if you're a wrestler watching this,
Yeah.
I mean, I got so much inspiration just because there's a lot of parallels you can draw.
Well, the movie starts off the very opening scene at the Munich Olympics, one of the Olympics, in which he was the favorite to win, and he was winning the entire race. And the last half the lap, the guys pass him. Right. This was back to his fault in his style. But the quote starts off from Donald Sutherland. He talks about, it says CTS, LTS, Fortius, and I had that tattooed on my chest. I got that done when I was 17, one of my 2 tattoos. But that in Latin means faster, higher, stronger. But he then expands on the quote, saying it's not about being faster, higher, stronger against your opponent. It's just about being faster, higher, stronger. And for people who don't know, that's the Olympic motto, and that's what the whole Olympic spirit idea is it's to participate and to be faster, higher, stronger than what people think is possible. Mm-hmm. And I like that.
That's sick.
Yeah.
And speaking on maybe, Steve Prefontaine, he's a stud, right? I think that I look up to him as an athlete just because of the do or die mentality.
Yeah.
Or like you said, every pace is a suicide, or only pace is a suicide pace. Did you have growing up role models in wrestling, or maybe just people that you looked up to? I think the word that we talk about a lot is mentors.
Yeah.
Who were some of your biggest mentors, both in wrestling and outside of the sport? Growing up and now.
I like how you made that distinction, because this is something I actually struggled with. I remember back in high school, some of my teammates were like, "Man, he's like a role model to me," and I honestly, Miles, in my heart of hearts, I never felt like. I'm like, this is just someone who just he's good at this and he figured it out. Mm-hmm. I remember I met Rulon Gardner when he had his Olympic gold medal, and I was, I don't know, maybe 8 years old, came to my high school. I remember thinking, I'm like, man, this guy won the Olympics, the biggest thing you could win. He beat the Karelin, who is the unbeatable Russian.
Yeah.
But he wasn't a role model to me. He was just a guy that I'm like, man, he figured it out, right? And that goes throughout my entire life. It's been like that. So there's only one I have role models precisely, because there's always give and take, but there are people that I hold in super, super high respect, right? So, yeah, anyone who's got a medal from the Olympics, it's I know how hard it is to get there. Almost sometimes the World Championships, I almost place more weight on that, depending on the year and weight class, because sometimes it's even harder. Yeah. So you get my respect automatically, just until you ruin it, which people do ruin it sometimes. But, I don't know, man. Maybe it's a special form of hubris I have. I don't feel like anyone's better than you. I just feel like they just figured out something that you are trying to figure out, and it'd be a good idea to behoove you to go talk to them to figure out how they did it. Because they'll probably tell you if they remember, like I talked about. Yeah. So.
I completely agree. I think idol worshiping is a kind of a dangerous game to play.
Yeah.
Because it's there's going to be something along the line that you're going to find out about that person if you put them on a pedestal that you might not like to hear, or just it might not be the same game that you're trying to win, and you're chasing this and you don't realize that everything has trade-offs.
Sure.
And so maybe that person was just willing to trade something that you weren't willing to trade, right, to get there.
Yeah.
I like that answer. So nobody.
Dude, I was telling your brother this yesterday. I'm kind of battling a rib injury at the current moment. So I was on the treadmill yesterday watching practice, and your brother's running right next to me. And I told him that in my feed, a really good quote popped up. One of the ones I saved it. And if I save a quote, it's it really it resonates with me. I'm not gonna give it its full justice because I don't remember the whole thing was long. But he basically talks about, it was Naval Ravikant, who is a big tech guy, and he's also just a really, really smart dude. But he talked about envy.
Naval.
Yeah.
Like Naval.
Exactly. Naval podcast, follow him. Envy doesn't make sense because you want to look at the success someone has, and you wish you had that, but no one ever talks about all the stuff they had to give up, all the failure, everything else attached along with the success. You're not looking at the bigger picture, right? Are you willing to give up all that these person had to give up to get the success? Mm-hmm. And you're probably not, right? And that's the difference. So envy in general doesn't look good in anyone. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Logically.
100% agree. I'm so happy that Alec decided to give us a quote, because he just led us into our next sector, which it's We're 24 minutes in, actually. I think that you're not a superstitious person. I think you'll be able to last the next 5-10 minutes.
Let's go. 5. I'm getting pretty hot in here. I'm not gonna lie.
5-10 minutes. All right. Don't. Yeah, I think Jaden was 31 or 32. But by the time we finish this segment, we'll be done.
Sure.
Yeah. Twist the mic towards him.
Yes, camera guy. We can't
Clean
say
up
his
on
name,
aisle
remember,
4.
from the last
Clean
episode.
up all Walmart Associates. Okay. Then
More. Maybe a little more. All right. It doesn't want to do it.
Okay.
That's good.
Maybe.
All right. I got a note card here.
Ooh.
All right. Alec just quoted somebody, and Alec likes quoting. He's a big quote guy, and so am I. We have a lot of locker room discussions. Our lockers are pretty much next to each other.
Yeah.
Or we'll just throw quotes back and forth. So we're gonna play a game called Name the Author,
Ooh.
and I got 5 quotes here.
So, okay, here's the thing. This is why, let me just add this. I like adding quotes to my daily lingo because it forces me to try and remember names. This is something I had a really hard part in the passing time. I'd be like, someone tell me the name, like, oh, nice to meet you. Then literally 2 seconds later, I'm like, oh, what was your name? Right? So when I do quote someone, it's almost disingenuous for me to not to mention their name. It doesn't mean I remember their name. I'll try, but just that's a fair warning. Like,
I'm not going too crazy on you.
Okay.
I think you should be able to get at least 2.
okay.
All right. There's 5. I'm aiming like 2 or 3.
And also, just so you know, there's nothing new under the sun, so I could say any name, and it's quite possible they said it.
They also said.
They're just not the original.
I agree with you.
So
All right.
that's a quote.
Here we go. Quote number 1: "The unexamined life is not worth living."
Ooh, it's one of the Stoics.
One of those stoics.
One of the Stoics. Just from odds, I'm gonna say it's Marcus Aurelius. Could be Epictetus. Could be Seneca.
Oh.
Here's the thing: they all steal each other's work,
They do.
and they changed the lingo. How they do it. They wrote in a different language back then. They spoke in, I think, Latin, but they wrote in ancient Greek or something like that. So it's
If you had to guess one more, who would you guess? It's none of those.
an unexamined life.
You said Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, or whatever. Epictetus.
I'm gonna go Seneca.
Seneca. It was Socrates.
Yeah.
It's all right. All right. That was not one I was expecting you to get. Okay. Next one. I think, therefore I am.
I think, therefore I am. Man, on the spot when you're hot, it's hard to recall.
This also the hot seat adds.
Nietzsche said that.
Nietzsche. Another great guess. This one was Rene Descartes.
Descartes, yeah.
Rene Descartes.
Yeah, I should know that.
All right. Here we go. They're going to get easier, I promise. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Listen, all I know is from the most recent one, that's Wayne Gretzky said it, but it wasn't his original quote. He definitely stole it from someone else.
He did.
Yeah.
Well, I thought you were going to say Michael Scott because it's Wayne Gretzky quoted by Michael Scott. If
yeah.
you've seen The Office.
Oh, okay.
All right, so you got Wayne Gretzky. That's one. So, all right. Here we go.
Is tough, man. No one else got quizzed.
The last two. I'm just a big, hairy American winning machine.
Just big, that's Ricky Bobby, dude.
Oh, Ricky
Shake
Bobby.
and bake, yeah.
Shake and bake. If you're not first,
You're last.
you're last. All right, so he's got 2 for 4 right now. 2 for 4. I said I thought 2 or 3. All right, last one. Riding a motorcycle makes you better at wrestling.
Oh, I said that. 100% I said that, and I thought about it. I'm like, dude, my reflexes are off the charts every time I'm riding. People who ride motorcycles or mopeds, bicycles, they understand this. It's like, you're not just, like, when you drive a car, you zone out. Sometimes you don't remember how you get there. On a bike, you're feeling every single crack. You're feeling every single, if a bug hits you, it hurts, right? So I'm scanning the road, and I'm like, same idea with you scanning your opponent to see where he's moving. Makes you a better wrestler. You know, I ended up losing that weekend, so it didn't really age well. But
What is that, circa 2023?
something
Like a year ago?
Olympic.
I went into the deep Alec Pantaleo Twitter archives to find that. But that is Alec Pantaleo.
Said it.
So 3 for 5. That's pretty good. The first 2 are kind of hard. Those are like some ancient philosophy, and like you said, probably said by somebody before them or shared. But I like that game. I'm gonna have to play this with Alec on the regular.
What are we at time-wise? I think I'm done here.
All right, we're at 29 minutes. You got to go another 2 minutes. You can do it.
2 minutes?
I think you can do 2 minutes.
In my defense, Afano was on before I got in.
It was on before you got in. And all right, we'll end with this because I think that by the time you answer this, we'll be done anyways.
Okay.
I always like to end kind of giving some advice. And so for this piece of advice would be, if you had one thing to say to the younger generation what would it be and why?
Find a mentor that has what you want as early as possible and trust what they say. It's not about just trusting blind coaches who may have your best interest in heart, but they don't know what they don't know. Find a mentor. This is something you and I, Miles, we can both attest to. It wasn't until we got Sergey Belogazev in our corner where we actually developed to wrestlers. We were wrestlers, but we developed into becoming world-class wrestlers. So that's life, dude. I mean, be apprentice somewhere, shadow someone. It's about finding a mentor that gives you personal feedback towards your experiences, and that'll give you automatic fast pass to where you need to be in life.
Beautiful. Well, I don't want to keep him any longer than he needs to be. I think we're gonna have to fact check the time or double check to see if he beat Jaden. 30-30. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right, he's coming out. We're stopping at 30-30. I think we might even have a tie here because we didn't ever have Jaden's official time.
Yeah, it started at 20 the time I got in here.
But Alec, where can we find you? Alec Pantaleo on all socials, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm kind of a ninja on social media for the most part.
Put this down.
It would be a smart idea for me to be a little more post active, but I like just watching things, analyze. I'm trying on this current ebb, flow, whatever point I'm at in life, I'll find out when I look back. You got to be careful that what you listen to isn't over-programming your current thoughts, because we're all victims of programming to some point, right? Or usually it's our parents teach us stuff. And something I tell you, Miles, a lot, I realize, something happens, you start turning 30, you get kind of stubborn, and I don't want to be a stubborn old man that's, based on convictions. I want to be an inquisitive person that questions a lot, but also has strong beliefs. But it takes open dialogue to do that. So, yeah, I would just, I forgot what the original question was, but it was basically be inquisitive, learn as much as you can, hop on projects, ebb and flow in life. You're going up, you might go down, but it's going to come back up again, right? The analogy I actually saw that I adopted was the surfer analogy. And I realized when I went to Hawaii once, I spent 5 hours out in Hawaii just on the water surfing. And I only caught 3 waves. The time flew by because you kind of just floating through, waiting for that next big ride. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good adoption you can add towards life. If you're at a rut, that big ride is coming. It's up to you to notice it and ride it. You might miss it, but you're going back in the flow state, and another big ride's coming. So, yeah, something to think about in this stressful world.
He's just giving free game right there. That's bonus.
Helps me.
All right, Alec. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Shake and bake, baby.
Yep. Shake and bake.
That's it. Thanks for tuning in, guys.